I have the esteemed, pristine, wonderful doctor. Okay, let's get this straight. Okay, I don't know many doctors in my life except Simone and maybe my auntie. And they're both black women. So sorry, Dr. Simone Hyater-Adams. Say hello to the people.
Hello, my dear.
It's so good to see
Here.
you as always. I have a few questions that I want to ask you in regards to what it means to be seen in physics. As you know, I am curating a 3-piece painting physics series, and I've been battling with learning to love physics again through art. And one of the things that has arisen is really, what does it mean to be seen in physics, especially as a Black woman, especially as someone who is in the academia, is an educator, a researcher, and attends different conferences. And you know, we are in a field that is traditionally white male.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, we don't see anyone at all look like us. And so when we do, it needs to be celebrated, it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be shared. So my first question for you is really, do you think there is a difference between being seen in physics than being seen in performance? And what do you think it means to be seen in physics?
So to be seen, I like this framing, and I've been trying to think as you've talked about it. What does it mean for me in general to be seen, even, regardless of in what, arena? And I think I personally struggle with this. I think it's actually linked to very specific, like, childhood, like, trauma and experiences that I've often felt invisible.
Right.
And so being seen has always been a thing that I think I have kind of strived for. And I think many women also are invisibilized as Black women, right? We are made to be invisible in this society in so many ways. Okay, especially, don't let us be a Black woman and queer. Don't let us be a Black woman and, trans, right? Don't let us be a a woman and, differently abled, right? And so those, at those intersections are some of the most hyper visible and invisible people, right? And so when I think of what it means to be seen, I think it's about the acknowledgement of humanity and also the acceptance of humanity in a way, but also, like, there's power involved, right? Like, being seen, saying that kind of seems like, there's one thing to actually just be seen. Like, okay, I acknowledge your existence in this space. Like, we see who you are, but there's also a part of, like, what I think when we say being seen, as we talk about it, is also being, like, uplifted and being supported, being celebrated. And those are things that I think are what I want when I think of being seen in these spaces and in life. And it's a big part of it, right? It's not just acknowledgement of existence, right?
Yeah. I definitely, like I said earlier, when I was talking about being seen, I think I look at it from a perspective of taking up space that, is traditionally a space held where I am typically not found. And also people acknowledging my skill set, my work, and my ideas that I bring into these spaces. And I know this is what I think, but oftentimes as a performer, we are seen as characters portraying someone else. And I think that it's important to understand that in physics, we aren't trying to perform any particular character. We are just presenting and being ourselves. And yes, that may take drawing from our performance background, but that does not make us a spectacle nor show. And I know, even though we talked about this earlier, so, and it makes me think, like, some of it is true, but some of it is also not true.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, like, when it comes to performance, there's something about, like, just the act of performing that's very, like, intentional and temporary. Like, there's one thing when I think of, like, performance art, when we talk about theater and dance and things where you go on to do, like, a 1 hour, 2 hour performance, right? You are portraying a character in that moment, who may not be you, but how you portray it is linked to who you are, right?
Exactly.
And so I think there's one thing about performance when it's on stage in many ways where it's temporary, but I also see as performances in life, like, we are in a constant performance, right? And this is, people have done work and said things like this for centuries, right? Like, we are all just players in this world. And Shakespeare have a famous quote about that. And all the world's a stage. But I think when it comes to performances in life and what it needs to be seen through your performance of, like, Physicist, or your performance as an artist and things like that, is value. Like, you need to, if I want to be seen as a physicist, I want to be valued as a physicist and how I am performing it, right? Because there are certain types of performances of physicists that are valued higher, right, than maybe that of mine, right? Like, I don't value string theory. Sorry, I don't care about it, right? Like, the gravitational waves are cool, but I also care very little about it. And I still feel like I am a physicist, right? Like, the things I care about when it comes to physics is what actually the root, I'm interested in what we are calling physics, like, what matters, like, what content we call physics, like, what is the root of being a physicist? People try to say it's how we reason, right? Reasoning, logic, deducting, using evidence to come to some decisions or some observations about the world and all of these types of things. If you ask a physicist, what does it mean to be a physicist? They'll say things like curiosity, right? They'll say things about asking questions, being able to solve complex problems, right? And so it doesn't become like gravitational waves, right? It doesn't, people don't say being a physicist is knowing F equals ma. Like, they don't say that, right? They say all of these other actions, right? And so I think that type of content is what I'm more interested in when we say what it means to be a physicist, because I think those are the actual useful tools of the field that we should be spreading. But we don't value that in physics. What we value is certain types of status based off of the hardest math someone can do to solve a problem, right? How can we make things the most complicated computational experience for someone? And if you can do that computation, well, you're a part of the club now, and you then can do everything else, because for some reason people think if you're a physicist, you're so smart you can do anything, and that is not true. And so right, so, like, being seen as a physicist, I think, is just the collective value of the community that we place on people who do physics or perform their physics identities or perform being a physicist differently than what we think of when we think of physicists. And it's past the community, right? It's global. You go anywhere, whether you're a physicist or not, and people see you as this person who is a genius, right? And it's a weird spectacle. And it's strange to go through. And especially when you're a Black woman, right? Like, so many other things in your life change when you decide to perform being a physicist, right? You are now somehow, like, pushed out from your family, right? As though that's the smart one or something, or she's doing something we don't understand, so she's not like us. I've been told that I'm not Black anymore. Many times, right? Like, trying to take away my Black card or something because of going to Colorado to grad school to do physics, right? Like, things like this there's this strange policing, and there's also strange expectations around the performances of physics. It's very, very interesting and complicated, I think. And so that, I think, is similar in art in my art circles. And when I go into those performance spaces, it feels more welcoming because of the ones that I'm in. I do think there's ways that artistic spaces do similar types of policing. Like, you aren't an artist if you aren't doing it this way. And a lot of this, is just all kind of under this white supremacist structure, right? It's all influenced by capitalism, white supremacy, like all the isms and forms of oppression that are built in our society. But the ones that I have been able to go into have been much more healing, right? Like the places, I see department, University of Colorado's Department of Dance had professors who I think held artistic spaces that valued humanity and valued the self and the spirit and wellness, really, in ways that I needed at the time. And so I feel like when I think of my artistic side, it is a place where I feel seen. I think I do a lot of I put a lot of shame on myself in physics and in art. There's like this expectation of like being great. Like you don't want to look dumb dancing, right? You don't want to look dumb on stage in front of people, or look like you can't do it, or be a laughing stock and not look professional, right? You don't, that imposter syndrome exists in both areas. But like, because I have found these artistic spaces where I've been able to be free in them and actually do my own movement, and they're encouraging and they put me on stage in ways that make me feel validated and valued, it has been much more healing than physics spaces, right? But there are places in physics, I think, that I also have felt seen. And so really it's about finding the community of people who will value you and uplift you in order to be seen no matter what. And so I don't think there's much of a difference in art and physics in general when it comes to it. But I know for me, in my experience, one has been more, I think I've felt seen a lot more in artistic spaces and performance art spaces than I have in physics spaces.
I guess in my own experiences too, it's hard. It's really hard to see which one has really allowed me to be like seen. Because I mean, for me in undergrad, I wanted to be seen in theater, and I was doing all the theater stuff. I was behind the sets, stage manager. I performed, but yet I still didn't feel at home in a sense. Like I don't think I had that. They were really great people. I'm not gonna discredit anyone, from that area, but I don't think I was seen as much as I was in physics. Even though with physics, it's like this weird thing. Like I loved the people were great, the professors were great. Like I had the ultimate culture, but that may also have been because I went to all women's college, so that is also a different like environment in and of itself compared to like my year in grad school at OSU, where it was like the complete opposite. I like got in and I was like, wait, am I the only black woman here? Is this is like a thing that y'all like? And so I mean, even though I wasn't the only black woman in the department. I was the only black woman in my year, but yet I was still recognized by professors, and like they wanted me to like be a part of like the organizations and be a TA and all of that other stuff. So I think for me now it's learning how to navigate the two spaces and figuring out that duality and even comfort. So my next question is it important then to have more conversations about the intersection of physics and art, or physics and science? And I just want to say, like, I always thought that I had to make one entity cool through the other in order for it to seem culturally accepted. And for me, it's always been like, oh, I need to use my theater degree in order to make physics seem cool or whatever. And I know now that like it's not necessarily true all the time, but for a long time, like I've been actively trying to see how to do that. And I think learning how to navigate both spaces in which I'm comfortable with will make a difference in like really my understanding of what it means to be culturally accepted. Because we oftentimes see that theater is more culturally accepted because everybody can kind of relate to theater in a way. But physics, no. Physics is like this foreign thing that only special people know. And then when like people ask me like my major, and I'm like, I have a physics and theater major, and they're like, how does that work? And it's like, it works like the way that I've done it. Like I've just done both, and like they've both been satisfying and fulfilling. So that's my question. Is it really important to have these conversations?
I mean, I think it is. And I think it is for several reasons, but the biggest one is that I just think the idea of the disciplines that we currently have in academia is just strange.
Mm,
Like the explicit separation of art and science is just bizarre
right.
to me, and I think it actually hinders a lot of truly useful education. Like
Pat
I
the
think
people in the back.
yes, say it does, right? And so I think there's a devaluing of art in our current lifetime. And maybe that's changing. I don't know. We'll see. But
Change it, you know.
yeah, but I see the separation as not real. I mean, none of it's real, stay woke. But I think the idea of trying to take apart artistic exploration and science exploration is an act of like another act of white supremacy, really. And I think the purpose of both is exploring the world. Everything that we're doing really out here is trying to understand the earth
Yeah.
and our lives and our purpose on it in many different ways. And I think the exploration of self in many ways is a method of doing that, like understanding ourselves and who we are, how we move our own bodies and how it works are both such artistic and scientific things, right? We literally study the body in science, but so we do the same thing in dance, for instance. Like, and I would argue that dancers know much more about their bodies than many biologists and medical professionals do. Like, and it's because they have to. When you're using your body, you must know it when you're using your body like that. And I remember being like this in dance classes where I'm like, oh my gosh, like how can you feel that this is wrong with you? Like, how do you know that this is like the issue with your muscle? How can you tell? That type of embodied intelligence is something that people don't even, I think, value. Don't People in the sciences don't value in the arts, right?
Right.
And I think that both can be stronger. Both of these things can be stronger if we actually consider them together. Like, even if we teach somehow the ways that science investigates the body separate from the ways that dancers do, like requiring both dancers and scientists to know both of these methods seems like an obvious thing that we should be doing already. And that's just one example, right? And so I think it is really important for us to interrogate the separation of art and sciences, because who made it, who made that separation, when did it happen, for what reason? Like, I bet you we can find problematic ideologies in that, right? I bet you we can find links to that, maybe to capitalism and to oppression, to racism, to sexism, right? Like, the reason how we got here was not through unproblematic means. And so it wasn't through objective means either, right? Like, there are reasons. There's so many indigenous knowledges, right, from tribes, and like there's people who have been doing work to understand ourselves and the world in ways that have not been European, and we don't even know all of those methods, all of those perspectives of looking at the world, right? That the knowledge has been almost erased, right, for some of these things, and we'll have to somehow rediscover it in a way, right, if we want to go back to it. But there's been so many ways, right, that we could understand the world around us, and I think we can get back to having more perspectives, which I think is better for humanity. To have as many ideas that we can around the world, about who we are, like what we actually are and why we're here, than trying to all learn the one European, right, hegemonic way that has colonized the entire planet, right? And so I think if we can figure out how to just, I think this particular conversation is an act of, honestly, decolonizing thought in a way. Like, it is an act of pushing back, and maybe I shouldn't call it decolonizing thought, right? I think there's really particular definitions for
right.
decolonization. I don't want to co-opt the word, but I think in a way that this thought is just at the it's at the verge of pushing back against the systems,
right?
And it makes the conversation worth having, right? Because if we are all in our different areas trying to push back against dominant ideologies that are oppressive, the conversation of, you know, art and science and their origins and their you know, their value together,
right
it is an act of pushing back, I think, in a way. And I see it as that for myself, because people are, you know, we're in a world where people are trying to put things and everyone and everything in boxes, and boxing people in is a form of white supremacy. Because
what Nani said. She's like,
yeah,
why are you trying to label yourself all the time? Just do it. Just be.
Yeah, do the things you want, right? Like, I think I'm a person, and many people are in several different pots, right? But the society only values certain pots over others, right? And that fragmentation can feel very stressful in many ways, but like, there are communities that can bring together the ideas. Like, we don't have to fragment if we have a community like, say, Customer, where everyone is very clear about the value of doing art and science together, and how that, you know, feeds into, you know, justice and anti-oppression. And it's like, yes, that is the intersection that I care about. Wow, like, let me go hang with those people. Like, there are communities out there. There are communities who still understand the knowledges that I've talked about before from the past. Like, there's people who do research about that. You know, there's everyone is doing everything. There's people out there doing a lot of things. It's just we only hear about certain ones, and only certain ones are elevated, right? And talked about and valued and given the money and the power to, like, you know.
Because that is culturally accepted.
Right. Anyway, I think going back to the question, like, yes, I think these are conversations that need to continue being had, right? Like, we need to continue to think about all the ways that art and science are not different, in fact, and like how we can actually get down to the root of what it is about them that everybody can take away and then also how we can start making sure every single person who's getting like an education in this world will unlearn these things.
Thank you for that. This was great. I didn't know what to expect, but honestly, like, every time I talk to you, I'm like inspired, and I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, from the heart of my bottom. I'm also a comedian, y'all.
An actual fact. You like, if Yvonne Orgy could do that special, I'm ready to hear you as well.
Oh girl. I appreciate it. That's gonna be in my next life.
I'm so dead.
But in all seriousness, like, thank you for doing this. This was like more than I could have asked for, and I appreciate you being a part of this journey with me, and just holding me down as a person and keeping me accountable, keeping me thinking, keeping me wanting to gain more and equity, love, inclusion, all of that stuff. And for the folks out there, please take care of yourself, pray, drink your water, meditate, paint, dance, sing, do whatever you need to do to get to the next day. We need it.
Yeah, these are trying times, as they say.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you for having me. I always love talking to you. I love you dearly. And I am excited to see what happens with this blog as you continue to grow it. I'm very excited.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
You're welcome.